It's crazy how expectations can change in a very short amount of time. A week or two ago, this Wrexham squad was down under for our 3 games in Australia and New Zealand, and after watching those 3 games, it was fair to say a lot of the fans, including myself, were thinking we are going to need some big signings if we're going to survive in the Championship this season. And not even like a week and a half on, we have seen some big signings. Liberato Cacace, George Thomason, Josh Windass, and now playmaker Lewis O'Brien has joined Wrexham Football Club on a 3-year deal, most likely to be a record transfer fee for us. We are making a massive statement to the rest of the Championship with not only this signing, but the signings we've made since returning from our pre-season tour. And as crazy as it sounds, I still don't think we're done yet. But today we are focusing on the big signing of midfielder Lewis O'Brien from Premier League side Nottingham Forest, a massive signing for Wrexham. We're going to be talking about his career, what he can bring to this Wrexham team, the role he's going to play, and overall why this is a big statement to the rest of the Championship. Before we get going in today's video, I say it every video, if you'd like to see the best Wrexham content, it's on this channel. Plenty of transfer news coming your way. News just regarding Wrexham for the upcoming Championship season is going to be on this channel. It's free to subscribe, so if you would like to, and if you see yourself not subscribed down below, make sure to subscribe. We're on the road to 29,000 subscribers, and without further ado, let's get talking first about O'Brien's career today. So Lewis O'Brien is a 26-year-old centre attacking midfielder who's had quite the career so far. He's an academy graduate of League One side Huddersfield Town, where he's spent obviously the whole of his career in the academy there, building his way up the ranks before getting into that first team, and he made a real statement when he was in the Huddersfield squad for the 3 seasons that he was there. 131 games across those 3 seasons in a Huddersfield shirt, which is a ridiculous return. For his first few seasons in men's football, he really impressed for them, and he nearly took his boyhood club up to the Premier League in the 21-22 season, but they narrowly missed out in the playoff final when they did lose to Nottingham Forest. Of course, a couple months on, Lewis O'Brien was then obviously moving on to different things, obviously as they did lose out on promotion. He then joined Nottingham Forest, who they were defeated by in the playoff final. And I think it's fair to say his time at Forest was very poor, and I think he didn't live up to the expectations that he had from the fans when he first joined. And of course, I think him himself will be disappointed with the return that he did have following his big move up to the Premier League. He made just 17 appearances for them before having 4 separate loan spells, 2 coming in the Championship for Middlesbrough and Swansea City, and 2 coming over in America in the MLS for LAFC and DC United. So he never really made Nottingham Forest his home. 4 loan spells as well across 2 seasons. Yeah, I think it was about time O'Brien found a permanent home elsewhere and really kicked on, and he's found that at Wrexham on a 3-year deal. He's going to be at the football club now for the following 3 seasons, an ambitious project which I'm sure he really wanted at this stage of his career, and let's hope he can fulfil the potential in a Wrexham shirt. So yeah, like I said, he spent time at the likes of DC United, LAFC, Middlesbrough, and most recently in the second half of the Championship season last year for fellow Welsh side Swansea City, where he really enjoyed a successful spell at the club. He only scored 1 goal in the 16 games that he did play, but he had a really good string of performances, becoming a real key player in that Swansea side, as they really did finish the second half of the season and finish the season in general really strongly. And O'Brien had a big part to play in that, and I think it's been the case for most of his loan spells. He's performed for the club. We look at his average ratings across the 4 loan spells, they're 7+, they're in the greens. I'm not sure why he hasn't gone on a permanent move elsewhere. Could it have been Nottingham Forest possibly looking for, that 1 loan spell to possibly kickstart his career back at Nottingham Forest? But he's had that at LAFC, he's had that at DC United, they've had changes of managers at Nottingham Forest, so I don't think that helped in that sense, and I think the timing couldn't be more right for him to move away on a permanent move. And I think as well, his CV up to date is really good, and we should be looking at this thinking he's had some really good seasons at Huddersfield Town. The 2 seasons he spent in the Championship, he's played really well. Yes, he might not have registered all the goals and assists in the world, but it's about the performances that he does put in the 90 minutes that he does play. And over the course of the spells that he's had at Middlesbrough and Swansea City, the fans seem to have taken a really good liking to him, and I think if he can bring that form over that he had at those clubs, especially the teams in the MLS as well, including those, it's still a competitive league over there in America, then I think it's going to be a massive coup for us. So what can we expect from Lewis O'Brien as a player? I think we're going to expect a midfielder who is going to create chances, and I think we're going to see a side to Lewis O'Brien that has that attacking threat, but also can do the backtracking and can do that defensive work, the dirty work in the midfield. And I think as well, overall, we've seen it from his loan spells previously. I think we're getting a player that is going to be a consistent performer in that midfield week in, week out in a Wrexham shirt, which, returning to the second tier for the first time since the early 1980s, is something we really need. We need to be on it week in, week out, and we need players who are going to win games for us, not by the goals, not by the assists, but for doing the tackles, for breaking up the play, for just putting in that 7.5, 8 out of 10 performance week in, week out. And I think we can kind of expect Lewis O'Brien to not fill that void. I don't think that's the right phrase to use, but fill that void in terms of bringing a player in who has that championship experience and we know is going to perform for us week in, week out, because he's going to bring to the team a very strong work ethic, a strong engine in that midfield, a consistent performer, consistent runner in the team, will cover the ground that we do need in that midfield. Something that I think we've got a lot already in George Dobson, Ollie Rathbone, those players that can just run for 90 minutes on end, but it's something that you can't really have enough of in this Wrexham team, especially taking that step up from League One to the Championship. We're expecting that creative side of Lewis O'Brien in that Wrexham team, and I think Phil Parkinson has signed him having seen his attacking threat that he can bring to sides, but he's also got that defensive side to him as well and can provide that good cover defensively. Like I said, he's got an engine in midfield, so if Parky's going to play him in that flat centre midfield role, you're going to expect to see a midfielder that's going to create those chances, thread those balls out to the wing backs, look for that killer ball through the final third. But then again, he's had a good history of just being that consistent performer in the midfield, that consistent runner, the player that you know is going to cover the most ground in the midfield in the whole team from the 90 minutes. And I think Lewis O'Brien is going to be that midfielder that, like I said, can offer that attacking threat but can also get stuck in and add that defensive cover and break up the play really, really well for us, similar to sort of the role that George Dobson does play. But I think you could argue that Lewis O'Brien is an upgrade on most midfielders we've got at the setup at the minute. I touched on it briefly just then. It's a much more competitive league for Wrexham. Going in from League One to the Championship, the step up in quality, in the golfing quality, I think is probably the highest separation from any leagues in the English pyramid, and it was so important that we recruited well and we recruited players that could match the quality and the tempo that we're going to face in the Championship this season. And adding O'Brien to the midfield is a big move. It is a big move for Wrexham, and the intensity that he's going to play in that midfield is going to be so apparent to the fans in the stands, to Parky, and I think we will see him eventually, and I think we see him before he's even kicked a ball for us, as a big upgrade. And I think we can sort of foresee the future that he's going to be a really important player for us. I think as well, he's proved himself in the Championship before. He's proved he can be a key player for any Championship side. Huddersfield Town in the 21-22 season finished third in the table. O'Brien played 50 games, 6 goals and assists, and his performances were incredible. They were so consistent throughout the season, and he was one of the best players in the Championship when it comes to playing in midfield and midfielders on the whole, statistics wise. And I think he can even admit it himself. The move to Nottingham Forest possibly came at the wrong time. Of course, you always want to be playing Premier League football, but could he have maybe lasted that one more season in the Championship for Huddersfield and then see what happens? It was always going to be sort of an interesting move, with Forest getting back to the Premier League for the first time in a lot of years, and I think it was always going to be evident that Steve Cooper at the time was going to recruit in a lot of different positions, and it was going to be hard for O'Brien to possibly make that step up and adapt to the Premier League. And I really do think it halted his progression as a player. Of course, being relatively young at the time when signing for Forest, he needed that game time week in, week out, but the 17 appearances and the multiple loan spells along the way, yeah, it's not really done him good. Of course, he's performed for the teams that he has been on loan at, but I think he would have wanted to have made a name for himself at Nottingham Forest, but that wasn't to be, and I've no doubt that he'll come to Wrexham, settle in really well with the squad we've got. We've got probably one of the best squads in terms of character and quality in the league, and I think we'll see the best version of Lewis O'Brien when he puts on a Wrexham shirt. This is another statement signing from Wrexham Football Club, and one that has me and a lot of other fans rightly excited about. We've signed, some massive players in the transfer window so far, but this one seems to really be the one that's exciting everyone. It could be the fact that, of course, we agreed a fee for him a couple of weeks ago, but the deal fell through in terms of getting personal terms agreed with. But to see the transfer back on and see his medical has been completed, everything's fine, and he's now officially a Wrexham player, I think has sort of put a lot of fans at rest in terms of, getting worried about this transfer, because I've no doubt in my mind that there was interest from a lot of different Championship clubs. I think Swansea City were really pursuing him, of course, after his good performances for them. But Wrexham must have a good pull in this transfer window. You can say it's money, this, that and whatever. We've pulled some massive names in so far, and I think we're far from done in terms of recruitment. I think we're still going to bring in another defender, another striker. I think we're going to splash the cash in the latter stages of the transfer window. But I think a crazy analogy to use in this situation, I remember really vividly about 7-8 years ago, Wrexham signed a winger called Jack McCreth, I think at the start of the 2017-18 season, when we were fan owned. I think at the time it was £40,000 we paid for him, and I remember thinking, Wrexham have really just spent actual money on a player. We were so used to getting players on loan from Premier League sides. Free agents were our forte in the National League, so to spend money on a player like that at the time was ridiculous. And to think, not even a decade on, we've just spent £4 million on a left back from an Italian side, and now we've signed a central attacking midfielder for £5 million, possibly taking our spendings up to the end of the transfer window to around 15-20 million. It's a crazy time to be a Wrexham fan, and we should be really enjoying this journey as it comes, because you never know what's around the corner for us. Everything is so unexpected. So yeah, I'm really happy with this signing. I think we did need that attacking threat, that possible addition to the central attacking midfield role. Of course, we've seen Josh Windass sign for the club a couple of days ago, and in that video I said I think he would play that central attacking midfield role, but now we've seen the signing of Lewis O'Brien. Windass is possibly going to play up front, and we'll see Lewis O'Brien take the role of Elliot Lee in that central attacking midfield role. What does the future hold for him? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and of course I'd love to hear your thoughts overall on this signing. Do you think it's a good bit of business? Do you think Parky is right for chasing him down for months on end to get his signature? And if you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like, make sure to subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you in another video. What a busy few weeks it's been on the transfer front. Hopefully it quietens down a bit and we'll see possibly one or two in before Southampton. But until then, take care guys, up the town.